because fingers have to run.
We don't have members of the public.
I believe our meeting has begun. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Planning Commission meeting. Today is Thursday, December 8th, and we have two items on the agenda. We'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We've invited Todd Myers if he could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, the republic for which is one nation, under God, liberty and justice.
Thank you, Todd. Let's go to a roll call. Let's start over here.
Fun.
Kirk Wilkins.
Troy Cunningham.
And we have a quorum. Okay, this is a public meeting, and given so, we open the time now to anyone in the public that would like to come forward with any ideas or thoughts or concerns. Okay, given that we don't see any, we will close the public input at this time, and we'll move on to item number, we will change item number 4 and 5. Let's go to item number 5, which is the approval of the 2017 regular meeting schedule for the Planning Commission. Who is leading that? We've all seen the calendar. It's in our packet. I'll entertain a motion to approve that unless you have any feedback.
No, it's just the typical schedule, second and fourth Tuesday of each month, without those where you're overlapping with Thanksgiving and Pioneer Day.
Okay.
I move that we approve the 2017 regular meeting schedule for the Planning Commission.
May I have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Let's move on to item number 6. This is a work session, Maverick, located at northwest corner of Redwood Road and Pony Express. Maverick, Inc. Russell Scoose is the applicant. Turn the time over to Kara Knighton for the presentation.
All right, so this is a work session for the rezone concept plan and general plan amendment for Maverick at the corner of Redwood Road and Pioneer and Pony Express. That's what I was trying to say. Thank you. Just for further reference, North Up, Pony Express, Redwood. We all know where we're at. This is the original concept plan that was in your packet, and as you can see, the Maverick Center with the gas pumps out in front, 2 additional pumps and parking around the edges. North is up, and there is a full access proposed off of Pony Express and a full access off of Redwood Road pending UDOT approval. These are the proposed elevations. These are both front views. You have the back view and the top and both sides. Now this is the updated concept plan that was emailed to you earlier today. The main difference is the building's still in the same location. You still have the gas pumps out front. 2 of the pumps have been removed from this area and switched out with the dumpster and a couple of additional parking stalls on either side. You also have a picnic area, which is close up in this view here, just a broader view so you can see in what's going on there. This is the proposed landscaping plan. The reason for this particular updated concept plan was to address staff's comments during the original. This is a colored rendering of that same landscaping plan. And staff recommends that the Planning Commission review and discuss the proposal and give the applicant informal feedback on the proposed rezone, general plan amendment, and concept plan. The applicant is here if they would like to answer any questions or add anything.
Kara, before we turn the time over to the applicant, could you indicate where the filling area is? Where the trucks will fill up?
The trucks?
Yeah, when the fuel trucks.
Oh, the fuel trucks is
Yeah, could you just
Right
tell
here?
us where that is? Okay.
right in this corner here.
All right, thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward and join us? If you could state your name and address for the record, we'd appreciate that. Yeah, join us.
Yes, Russell Skews with Maverick.
Hi, Russell. Did you want to add anything to the presentation that she's given?
I don't think so. I think that we've, when we originally met with the city and proposed our plan, we've gone and, as Kara said, we've addressed a lot of the comments, and we look forward to the discussion with you tonight. And we'll just, I think, just turn it over to you and answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, great, thank you very much. This is a work session, is this a public? Yeah, okay. So we'd like to turn the time over at this time to the Planning Commission for any comments.
I just have one question. I'm assuming UDOT's given approval for the full access there on Redwood. Is there any concerns around that? It seems right there close to that intersection, which gets awful busy both morning and night, to have full access instead of like just a right in, right out. Seems like it could be a potential problem, but I'm not UDOT. I just wanted to make sure that, or see what UDOT's thoughts on that were and if there was any concerns there.
Well, our engineer has met with UDOT, and the requirements for the distance of that turning movement is at UDOT standards, and so we are in the process of getting that permitted. We do have the updated plans that reflect the changes to Redwood. So at this time, we don't have a permit in hand, but we are working towards that.
Changes to Redwood that you're talking about.
And the changes to Redwood that you're talking about are the widening of Redwood
Yes.
further south, right? How do you anticipate that impacting you, if at all?
I don't think that it will. We've already addressed that in our plan, because we've met with them early on, and we've got some of their plans already.
Okay, all right. The way you'd said that made me think that maybe there was something you were working on there.
Oh, no, sorry.
That's all I had, thanks.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Funk?
I had a couple of questions and concerns. One was, how many pumps is it there?
There's 7.
7 pumps.
Does that have access on both sides? So is it really 14 different?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's access on both sides.
On both sides, okay. I questioned, again with the Redwood access area, I'm just wondering about the left turn there onto Redwood.
And that'll be something that will be addressed with UDOT. As you can see, based on the plan, where we've actually kind of pulled that entrance back or further north to
Right.
meet those requirements. So as we go through the process,
It just seems like he said, with the amount of traffic on that road, that it's still going to be really tough to turn left there.
right, and that'll be something that we'll address with UDOT.
And I could see how a right turn there would just make it, just only right turn would,
A right in, right out,
yeah, would be the best.
right?
My only other concern, which is a real strong concern, and that is the 20% landscaping requirement, and you only having 18.7. And
I think originally we only had 18.7, but I believe that the updated plan meets those requirements.
Okay.
And I know that staff hasn't had an opportunity, and I apologize that they got the plan late, and we've talked about that, and I know they're going to be reviewing that in the coming
Okay.
days.
Okay, and that's my only other concern. Other than I do like the taking out the other 2 stations, or 2 filling, the 2 pumps that you had. I think that's a lot, that just looks cleaner. It just looks a lot better.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Steele?
Well, I was on the Planning Commission when we went through the general plan and designated this as business park. And we had a commissioner who wanted to make it multifamily because she thought that multifamily was less traffic. We wanted the least amount of traffic in that area that we could get. And you're putting a very high intensive, use there. I can't support changing the general plan and the zone. And furthermore, you are wanting to not only change your portion, but the portion, another portion of the property. Is that correct?
No, we're just looking to change our portion.
Okay, so have you done a lot split or something? Because it says the entire parcel is a one,
No, not at this time. We haven't done that yet.
you would do that before.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify too, we may be a high use, but we're capturing the traffic. We're not generating the traffic there. I mean, we're capturing that's coming off of Redwood and Pony Express. So it's not like we're actually generating additional traffic, we're actually capturing what's already there and bringing it to the site. So it's not like we're generating additional, and we will have to do, I'm sure, a traffic study as we move through this.
As I say, when we did the general plan, it's been almost 6 years ago, the feeling of the city council and the planning commission is that we did not want a high-traffic use in that area. And therefore, I still stand by that. And the thing is, if you go in, then we're going to have somebody next to you say, well, he has commercial, so we want commercial. And all of a sudden, what we had designated as business park now becomes regional commercial. And I just don't think this is the place for regional commercial when we have regional commercial at the corner of Pioneer Crossing and Redwood.
Okay.
I just think this is too intense a use. Now, if everybody else agrees with you that, to go forward, a couple of things. Is the front door right in front of the aisleway of the disabled access?
No, it's off just a little bit to the right.
Okay, you would need to move your parking places, your disabled places, so they're as close to the front door as possible. What makes the most sense in most instances is that you have that aisleway where the general public can use that too to walk through so they don't get their clothes dirty.
And can we go back to the original plan? Because I'm not sure, because I know that one of the things that we had to do originally, no, it's about the same. It's about the same place. Because I know that when we went through and addressed some of the questions, we had to put a landscaping island in there, and so it kind of shifted things around a little bit.
But even though that doesn't make any difference with the federal law.
Right.
And so you need to move those.
We will be ADA compliant.
Okay. The other thing is, I feel like your elevations are rather plain on the rear, and that elevation needs something to dress it up a little bit, because when you're able to be seen from four sides, we really want four-sided architecture.
Okay.
And I'll ask staff, in this case, I know we have asked for parking in the rear and the building. How do we feel about this, staff-wise?
You can start.
Can we go, real quick, can we go back to the front elevation? Because our AD is in front of the door. See, because we actually have two doors.
That's what I thought, but
Yeah. So my fault.
okay, so you are compliant.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Okay, let's go. My brain totally spaced. What was the question? Parking. Thank you. Okay, so, yeah. With the pending ordinance, as it stands now, there is an exception where if 50% of the parking is to the sides and to the rear, then they can put 50 in the front. So that's an exception that they would have to request of the council.
Of the council.
Other, and it's, as we're working through the code changes that were recommended with the subcommittee, that's something that we're going to be discussing, because in these situations, things like gas stations, it doesn't really make sense to have them in the rear per se for some of these types of uses when you're looking at what's standard in most places, and so we're going to have that discussion.
I have worked in places where it's a reverse frontage, and they,
It's totally fine as well.
you know, and so it looks a lot better if it's done with a reverse frontage. It makes a lot better streetscape. But if we are not going to require it, then who am I? But that's all of those comments are if you do get the zone change, but I could not support it.
Understood.
Any other comments from the planning commission?
I have one concern I wanted to ask about, and that's, I drive along Redwood Road to Bangor in the morning, and we occasionally stop at your store in Bluffdale. One of the issues that we have, it seems like at least twice a week, there's a delivery truck that blocks quite a bit of the parking. I'm glad that this store has quite a lot more parking. That store is pretty tiny, so that's one concern I had is, would the delivery schedules be such that it wouldn't be blocked during peak hours, especially around 7?
And that is a very small site in comparison to this, and we are looking at other locations in Bluffdale, but a lot of times what we do, and if we had the additional room here, we would end up having the delivery truck parked in the back, and we would designate an area specifically for that to kind of get them off of a traffic flow so that they are actually out of the traffic pattern throughout the store.
Okay. And then my other concern was how this would affect the general plan, and I Commissioner still handled that.
Okay, so recently we passed a gas station over there on Redwood Road, just north of Neaters, and we required different delivery times for the gas, and we also talked about lighting, and we had a lot more scrutiny that we haven't talked about at this time. I'd like to be somewhat consistent. I'd like to be business friendly, but I would like to be consistent with the other business, so one doesn't have a fair advantage over the other. Could we look into that and see what kind of delivery times we've required the other gas stations so nobody has a economic advantage over the other? Like to, we had delivery time restrictions on that other gas station.
Was there not a specific reason why we required that? They weren't necessarily,
Yes.
there was an exception that we had granted for that.
What was it?
So in that situation, if you looked at the truck radius, they were going to be going into oncoming traffic, and because of in order for them to exit, in order for them to avoid obstructing traffic, that was a condition that was put in place.
Do we not have that here with this being a major thoroughfare? I mean, a lot of traffic goes very fast through Pioneer Crossing across Redwood Road right there.
Yeah, it's something we can look at. We can certainly look at it with the traffic study, and we'll get their turning radius information, and we can certainly consider that if it turns out that there are going to be issues.
Okay, and given that there is a rezone on this property, I think we have a lot more ability to determine what we're going to do here. Commissioner Steele had a concern about the ingress and egress on the entrance there right on Pioneer Crossing. I have the same concern. I've seen people cruising through there so fast, and I mean, they're going the speed limit, but it's very fast. I would like to see, if we are going to grant this, I would like to see that, I mean, maybe it's contingent upon, hopefully, that UDOT will put some kind of speed up or slow down lane there. If they didn't, I could see a lot of accidents happening right there. And for the safety concern, that's my concern.
May I?
Sure.
I live where I can see that intersection from my dining room window. And all too many nights, I'm seeing red lights there already. And tonight, when I came in, I think that you could have sat in your service station and waited probably 15 minutes to get out because of the traffic. It was solid, both on Pioneer Crossing and Redwood. I'm sorry, Pony Express. Who else did that? I think Kara did. Have a problem. But it's just to me, it's just not the right place. I know it seems like it's a good idea to capture the Eagle Mountain people and the school kids, but I'd hate to see us do it at the cost of safety of our citizens. So, and the other thing I will say, if it goes through, you may meet the minimum for trees, but it does seem like there are no trees along Pony Expressway. And I've been, you don't turn me loose with a planning book and then not expect me to comment. And the one thing what makes a great city is that trees help mitigate sound and pollution. And so, to me, we need some more trees.
And we can certainly look at that as we move through the process.
Okay. I know, you may meet the minimum.
Right, but if you're looking for some street trees, I'm sure that that's something that we can look into. Absolutely.
Russell, you looked like you wanted to say something when I was talking about the safety or the delivery times or the affected traffic. Did you have something that you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, no, it slipped my mind now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, so given it's a work session, we're giving you some feedback. Do we have any other thoughts that we wanted to share?
I was just wondering about Pony Express Parkway. Eventually, isn't that going to be widened, and do we know how wide that will be?
At this point, it's anticipated that it would widen to the west. The throat of Redwood Road going on, or Pony going on to Redwood is about where it's going to be for the time being. If it does widen, it will widen to the west onto the church's property. Because you've got the high school and the junior high that are kind of fixed boundaries, you've also got kind of that little jog at the corner of Thunder Boulevard and, is it Westlake? Westlake Boulevard, anyway. So I think that's pretty much defined. Also, the widening that will be happening with the next road project is actually from 800 West out to Eagle Mountain, and so that's where they're going to be widening in the next phase of the widening. So the block basically in front of this particular building is kind of at that width that it will stay for the time being.
I wouldn't want to have them put a lot into landscaping, then have to pull.
All right, did you have any other questions for us?
I don't think so.
You had something? Okay. Well, we thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. All right. Given that we have skipped over item number 4, we can go back to item number 4 now. Let's have a public hearing for the bicycle and pedestrian study and master plan, an element of the general plan. This is city initiated, and we'll turn the time over to our director, Kimber.
Some of that soundtrack. Getting a laugh track? That would be even better, I think. I think a laugh track would be more appropriate than an applause track, but. All right, Planning Commission, you have waited a long time for this. The last time, looking in your packet, as you know, the last time you saw this, you had work sessions on it early in the spring. You had a public hearing in April, continued to May, and then another view in June. And based on the feedback from the Planning Commission at that point of time, and the council also in a work session, the consultants went back and did a lot of research. We actually worked with an intern and the consultants to pretty much map all the sidewalks in the city so that we were clear where they were calling something a sidewalk or a trail. So hopefully those concerns have been addressed. It did take quite some time. But hopefully the document that we have is in a close to final form. The consultants have provided us with all the original files so we can make changes that we deem necessary, as long as they're fairly minor in form. Otherwise, we'll send it back to them and ask them to make some changes. So with that, in the packet, you saw the background. This is funded through a Mountain Land Association of Governments, or MAG, grant. There were a couple members of the Planning Commission serving on the steering committee for that. Website created to obtain public input, significant outreach, and now here we are. again with the plan. This is to facilitate bicycle and pedestrian connectivity throughout the city. We've previously had a trails component in our Trails Master Plan, but it was fairly incomplete and did not look at on-street bicycle usage or pedestrian connectivity within developments, and this goes a little bit farther. So some contents that includes on-street facilities and off-street facilities, amenities for bicycle and pedestrian users, mountain bike connectivity with adjacent towns, some help and direction on prioritization. I'm sure you noticed some really hefty price tags if the city were to go and build everything in this plan. So some prioritization, some suggested funding mechanisms, as well as developers come through, we'll be using the decision matrix to help decide what improvements should be installed along with the roads within their developments. So the options in your report are to forward a positive recommendation, forward a negative recommendation, or to continue it with direction on changes that you need to see. And then I'm going to go back to my seat over here, and I have the full study, and we can pull it up and look at your pages as you see necessary. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Kimber. Given that this is a public hearing, we'll open up the public hearing at this time, and seeing that there isn't anyone in the audience, we will close the public hearing at this time, and we'll open it up to the Planning Commission for comments. You look the most interested, please. Go
Okay.
ahead.
And I'm trying to find, well, first of all, David, are you on the General Plan Committee? Okay, the one thing that every time I read our general plan, I just grit my teeth, is because the word handicapped appears in it repeatedly. And that is not a politically correct term at this point in time. It should be disabled. And it's in this study, and that was one of my first comments, and then I realized, well, we're not really reviewing that. There's a place that's called...
Before we publish it, we could make that change, couldn't we? Okay.
Economic, somewhere there's what's called economic benefits, and I'm not finding it very quickly, but what is a road diet?
Road diet. A road diet is where instead of building extra lanes for people to continue driving their cars, you make it difficult to drive, and so then they use alternative modes.
Okay.
So don't build it, because if you build it, they will come.
Okay. 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 Oh, okay. There's a section of to sweep bike paths. Do we have the equipment to sweep bike paths?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I was going to say UDOT usually does it for Redwood, which is where our main bike facility is now.
We have a street sweeper, and we use that,
But what if it's a bike trail that's not, or a bike path that's not in conjunction with the...
So bike lanes, I'd say for sure. If we're talking just trails, then we do actually have a smaller piece of equipment that it's a roller sweeper that could be used in that scenario. But typically, our trails and things like that, even our paved trails, we don't do a whole lot with those types of...
And it talks a lot about snow removal on our bike paths. And now I know that when the UDOT roads clear the bike path too. But when we get a full system in, will we have the ability to do that? I know a four-wheeler with a blade can do it.
We actually have smaller equipment that we use for trails and sidewalks already. So we do that, and we do clear the trails. It's a lot slower process. We don't clear them as quickly as we do, say, the roadways, but our parks guys, basically, they do parks in the summer, and then in the winter, when snow hits, they're rehabbing our parks equipment, during the shoulder seasons, but then once snow hits, they switch over and they're doing trail snow removal.
They do it right behind my house. They have it enclosed.
They're very capable.
Okay, what I guess bothered me is this study wants the bike paths cleared before the roads.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
I didn't think so.
That's a best practices recommendation.
Okay.
And, you know, from a pragmatic standpoint, I mean, we will start, you know, as we begin our day, the priorities are priority roads. The parks crews, they start with around the buildings, and they're doing snow removal around the buildings, and then they start to shift into other areas as our prioritization takes place. And so, from a priority standpoint, I mean, we do prioritize all of our things as it makes sense, and from an operational standpoint, we'll do that. And yes, it is a best practice, but you know, so is removing ice from in front of buildings. That's our priority.
There is a difference, reality and what's best practice. Okay. Bike paths along the crossing and Redwood Road are marked, they have marked bicycle lanes, but there is no restriction on parking. And if we're going to really encourage bike and pedestrian access, I think we need to talk with UDOT and get no parking. Now, they've got it marked as bicycle lanes, but I have seen 2 and 3 tractor trailers in front of Beto's parked in the bike path. And I've seen a school bus on the other side by Wendy's parked in the bike path. And what that does, it forces the bikes, they're coming down the road where they're supposed to be and where you expect them to be, and all of a sudden they have to jog out. And it's a dangerous situation for both the bicyclist and the motorist.
As a cyclist who rides on Redwood, I can agree with that.
Okay.
However, there is, I mean, it is up to UDOT, and so we're happy to talk with them. And typically, if they pull over far enough, there is enough space for you to get by without going into the travel lane. The real danger is if you're looking down and you don't look up and see that there's a truck parked in your lane.
And with these big dump trucks, you know, side loaders, I don't know that, I don't think they... The bigger ones. It doesn't look like there's any room. Okay, on page 17, High Point Drive runs north and south, and it refers to a trail on the south side of High Point Drive, and I believe that should read the southern terminus of High Point.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, and I've looked at these maps, and I have interpreted them wrong, I think, but do we have a continuous trail suitable for bikes from the marina to the Jordan River Trail and along the Jordan River in Saratoga Springs?
Not yet.
No.
Do we have it planned?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Respect.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I think that that's going to be an important link that eventually needs to be continuous.
As it stands right now, we actually have trail in front of Heron Hills on both sides of the road, and then it dead ends, and then you've got a little bit on the west side of the road, you've got a little bit in front of Fox Hollow, then there's a gap in front of Fox Hollow. That is scheduled to come in with the church, one of the church applications on Deer Meadow. They're going to do the first, segment of that, and then the rest will be finished with Neighborhood 4, and so that will bridge that gap. That will actually get us trail from Heron Hills all the way to Jacob's Ranch, and then as Jacob Ranch fills in, then that would get us over to the Saratoga 4 chapel that's being built. On the east side of the road, you've got the gap basically from Heron Hills until Mallard Bay, and then from Mallard Bay, you've got it now all the way up to Legacy Farms. And then this summer, we actually have the Redwood Road widening project that will take it all the way to Pioneer Crossing. But the interesting thing is at virtually any spot along that trail corridor that is built, you can then dive down and then catch the Jordan River Parkway over at Inlet Park, and then you can be on Inlet Park at that point. So we are starting to get the connectivity. So you are aware, we are going to be extending the trail along the lake, as well with Mallard Bay and subsequent developments. And then we already have it down in Harbor Bay. It's just not connected between the locations.
Well, I noticed, I went to an open house for the home builders, their parade of homes, and it was not this year, but the year before. And they had a beautiful house there, and I looked for the trail out back, and they had kind of ignored that at that time. I don't know if it came in later or if it slipped between the cracks, but it was...
Which parade home, and was it in SSD?
No, it was down in Harbor Bay.
Nope, the trail's there.
I know the trail's there. It's on this side of that house, and it's on this side of that house, but that house didn't put it in.
In Harbor Bay, I can tell you from the marina to the end of Lake Cove, there is a trail along the lake in Harbor Bay.
Did they put it
I know what house you're talking about because I went and saw that. But what had happened is, because they didn't have the backyard landscaped, just storm water had actually pushed a lot of dirt and sediment onto the trail.
Okay.
They've since cleaned it up. It was there, it was pre-existing, it was just covered with mud.
It's a concrete sidewalk that entire length. I walk my dog on it very often.
Okay, well, I just, thank you.
And I do recall that time when it was that way, but it's there, it's been there.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. This is in the appendix, and the way I understand it, when we approve this, are we approving the appendix too?
Yes.
And for the parking,
The bicycle parking requirements, those are listed as, let me find the wording, best practices and not a requirement. So it's a reference, appendix reference.
so in other words, if a business comes in and says, we really want to provide bike parking, then this is just merely telling,
Some best practices.
Best
And if the city, the other item is if the city chooses to adopt bicycle parking standards, we can use this as a guide in creating those standards.
okay, retiming clearance levels, and it is in the appendix, and it's very close to the end, I think. And there's a place where it says walking speed that, and I believe it should read walking speed than.
Which page
Or I didn't write down the page last
are
night.
we looking
It's-
at? What was the wording?
Well, there's something about walking speed. Oh,
Oh, here we go. At a slower walking speed than 3.5. Okay.
Yeah,
Page
that's just-
101, thank you.
and then it talks about a raised intersection, and I believe this is on the last page or very close. I didn't write the page number
Okay.
down. And it talks about a raised intersection being textured. There's a couple of concerns. If you have a raised crosswalk, then it should, the texture should meet ADA standards.
Oh, right, okay.
And
Raised crosswalks right here, or raised intersections.
raised intersection, and it says something about texturing.
Often textured materials, right there.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's raised. My concern with it being raised is, if you remember back, say 10 years ago, when they first started putting curb ramps in.
Yep.
There was a slope.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many times I grabbed my mother, who had low vision, because she couldn't tell that there was a flare. And so that would concern me. I think they look nice. I think they serve a purpose, but they also present a danger. That's just a comment. And other than that, I think I'm done.
Okay.
Any others?
So a couple of questions. So, all in all, I really don't have much of a problem with this. There's a couple areas that I do. I am concerned about the parking standards, parking standards in that stuff here kind of leads. I'm okay for that for like public buildings, but any type of private business or whatnot, I would not feel comfortable in implementing or forcing parking standards on. Now, I realize we're not legislating any of this today, but I do have some concerns that this kind of becomes the justification to put something like that in place. And I kind of feel like that's something, if a business wants bicycle traffic, they're going to put in a parking. If not, well, we can, let the free market work its way out in that regard. And then, look at the pricing. Obviously, there's a fairly significant gap here. We can go all the way with the bare bones model at $8 million, all the way up to the all bells and whistles for $66 million. How will we kind of determine later on which model we get, how we implement this, how we fund it, and all that type of stuff?
Well, this is, the full build-out is an ideal, perfect world where we have access to lots of money and can just go do it. It's going to be similar to most of our other plans where as development comes in, they bring in their pieces and they bring in the priority items first. And then we kind of go from there. If we can get a grant, they have some suggestions for grants. If we get grants, we can do some infill pieces. So for example, there are a couple pieces of the Lakeshore Trail that are not paved. You have paved, going to dirt, going to paved, going to dirt, and we received a grant from MAG that will be here in a couple of years for us to go in and pave those sections to complete it. So we can go in and fill those gaps that way. We're not going to have this full build out in any sense of the word. I don't see that. But what it does is it gives us the vision, it gives us the tools and the steps to get there, and then as development comes in, it lets us know what we should be looking for from them.
Okay. So we are going to be using this to develop code around this section and putting in requirements for developers, builders, city, things like that.
Well, and when the city goes to restripe a road, we can look at this decision matrix and the toolbox and say, okay, this area is seeing a lot of bicycle traffic, we should put some bicycle boxes here. And we'll have we're going to be ordering the stencil so that we have the ability to do that. That's just one example. When the city goes in, that we're looking at some changes to Grandview along with the widening of Redwood Road. If we restripe Grandview and add a bicycle lane, they'll add the bicycle turn signal for us. So there's one way we got some improvement without us paying for it. They're paying for it. That's kind of what we're going to be using this for the city side of things. We do have opportunities to use lower cost improvements like some paint, as opposed to changing the pavement width. Most of the cross sections that they provided fit within our existing cross sections.
So you could add a bike lane by just restriping?
Correct.
Okay. That was really my only concerns and questions.
Couple things I want to ask. On page 49, talks about further study and coordination needed for connection to planned Lehigh separated bike lanes. So is Lehigh opening to coordinating this?
We'll see. It just says it's needed.
Okay, and then the other thing I had was on Pioneer Crossing. One of the other thing on this page, eventual roadway widening on Pioneer Crossing is not planned to accommodate on-street bike facilities. Will they replace those?
So, down the road, Pioneer Crossing will not accept bicycles, just like I-80 doesn't in most places, and I-15. So we have been talking with MAG, or with UDOT actually, and there are a couple of other options that we've been discussing, whether it's bringing a bicycle trail to the north, connecting something down to the south, and then swinging up. We're looking at different options, but some of those are a little bit out. Some have to wait for development to come in. One of the routes would require winding through a neighborhood to get out again, and that's not a great connection, especially for commuters. But it is something that's on UDOT's radar. It's something that's on Lehigh's radar and Saratoga Springs. And this facility, for example, here is planned in Lehigh. If we can get that, if they do install that and we can figure out a way to connect in our portion of the city, then that can solve the northern connection. And yeah, they're not going to replace it on the street or on Pioneer, but they will cooperate with replacing some form of connection elsewhere.
Whether they do replace it or not, you're still going to have bike teams going through there. And they actually are grateful that they get honked at because it knows.
They know someone's behind them.
Yeah, they know that someone saw them. So we're not going to accommodate anything, maybe even have a.
The rule will be, it will be treated exactly like, once it gets widened to its full capacity, it will be treated just like I-15 where it says no bike and no pedestrian traffic. The way that the law works is that if there is no viable connection, then you can ride it. That's why you see cyclists riding up the entrance to I-80 without being harassed by officers, because that's the best connection. There's no reasonable connection for them to bike around it. So here, if there's no other connection, then sure, but I don't know that we'd be able to make that argument. But then they're not planning on including any bicycle facilities at full build-out, UDOT.
But that's a while.
But that's like 20 years out.
That's a ways.
It is. Is the main constraint the bridges?
It's going to be all kinds of things. I mean, you've got to remember, Pioneer is going to get potentially widened into another row of houses or two. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of width constraints. And so, at that point, you've got to ask yourself, does it really make sense to, tear down a row of houses or something like that to facilitate a bike lane? And so, those are UDOT questions, UDOT conversations. We're planning for. We are having those conversations, but, I mean, that's kind of their issue to deal with on the, but for now, the fact that we've got connectivity and that we're planning for it, there's a long time that we can develop plans and strategies. So we'll stay focused on that over the next 20 years or so.
My last thing is on page 66. I was curious about when it says bike lane restriping. Does that cost just for the bike lanes, or is that for the entire road?
I mean, restriping is restriping. So whenever we, get into striping, we go out, we contract for it, and, it's just part of our maintenance budget at that point.
But I'm just wondering that, is it really $3,700 a mile just for the bike lanes, or is it for the?
$3,700 a mile for one stripe actually isn't bad.
Oh, really?
I think it's expensive, but that's okay. That's me.
Well,
How many 5 gallons of paint is that?
That's a lot of 5 gallon of paint, so if
And
you
you're
want to have a
thinking 6
volunteer
inches
team.
wide for a mile long? And there's traffic control and other things. I'm not sure that it's a bad.
Gordon, Mike, here you go. Just take it.
Yeah, so I just did $3,700 divided by 5,280. That comes out to be 70 cents a foot, and that is expensive. So I'm wondering if that's for multiple stripes.
Yeah. I did have a few questions for them on some of the costs, and so I'm happy, we can tweak those fairly easily.
That was going to be my main comment. I've looked at a lot of these estimates, and I was hoping that you would look at them, closely, because some of it, I mean, they have these metrics of 24 cents a foot for unpaved maintenance areas. If there's weeds on there, it's 24 cents a mile. Sorry, it wasn't a foot, it was a mile. I'm sorry, it's going to cost you more than 24 cents to get someone to weed a mile of that area. So I would take another look at all the estimates on there and get a really good idea. Maybe even
I'm going to have our
with other
public works
cities.
folks look into it and just give us a more realistic of what our costs are. These are, a lot of their information comes from UDOT, and under federal funding guidelines, things are a lot more expensive in some cases, and I'm not sure about that one that's 24 cents a mile either, so.
And if you were to do the ROI on this thing, I mean, if you're looking at the projected cash flows that you're going to have, 8 to 60 million is probably not really representative, because it's not going to be implemented today. It's going to be implemented over the next 30, 40 years, so it's going to cost more than, and anyway.
So if I might just interject that, so that says bike lane striping. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's at least 2 stripes plus plus the little caricatures every so often.
Could be.
If you're talking only paint, yeah, but I mean, typically when we do striping, there's a mobilization fee, there is, traffic control fees, I mean, there's just little things, and so as we stripe roadways and projects, I'm not saying we pay $3,700 a mile, but, I mean, you do see fees that kind of add up because you've got intersection and other things, and it's part of the maintenance expense. Plus, if we were doing this ourselves, you'd have to throw in the cost of, employees and things like that, and vehicles, and, it just.
I would argue that some of these are low and some of these are high, so it'd be good to get a better.
And that's the nice thing about planning. You use numbers to try and estimate, and then the actual cost becomes the actual cost when
Yep.
you're actually doing it. And so, from a pragmatic standpoint, we're probably not using this as a financial tool to tell us what we're going to spend, but it's a good number, and then we start breaking it down on a more bite-sized model.
There are companies that do this work all the time. They can give you a unit cost. So you could probably talk to some of them.
Well, like I said, they pulled this, they got this information from clients that they're working with, like UDOT and other cities that they've worked with, but that may or may not be accurate for here, and it may be, some of those really high costs could be inflated by the overhead by, using federal funds, for example. So I think they're not that far off, but some of them are at least a little bit off. We're happy to look at it if you want to include an allowance in your motion that we can make those changes before we get to council. We're fine with that too.
Do you have any other comments from the planning commission? Okay.
I just wanted to say that this definitely looks better than the last time.
That's why it took such a long time.
Kimber, you suggested a motion. Could you repeat that?
Just that you can direct staff to review the estimated costs and make any necessary changes. That way we don't have to bring it back here just for that change.
You have to put in there the typo that,
Oh, no, you can just go ahead and, so I'll just review the notes, the direction that I have, which is to replace handicapped with disabled throughout the document, modify the High Point Trail location verbiage, correct the typos, and add ADA compliant to the crossing, the texture, and then look at the costs more closely and update accordingly.
I don't know how to put the fact that on the raised.
I'll just put something along the lines of that it must, any such crosswalks shall be ADA compliant, and then they have to figure it out.
Truncated domes might work on the
That's
edges.
kind of what I was thinking.
Okay.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Based upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for adoption of the proposed bicycle and pedestrian master plan with the findings and conditions in the staff report, and with the addition that we ask that staff review the cost, and make updates as necessary.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have a question on the motion?
I accept that.
I do also.
Any question? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, let's move this on to item number 7, work session. Discussion of code and vision. Kimber.
All right, so with that huge packet that you forwarded, the council reviewed it. They had some changes and whatnot for the especially for all of the new setbacks and uses for the community commercial zone. So they assigned a code subcommittee of 2 council members to just go through and make a few changes throughout the document, and then we're taking it back to them in January, hopefully, if we can get through a couple more meetings with the holidays. So we don't have a code amendment package, the next one yet, but of course, as time goes on, the list is growing, so you'll see another packet coming in a few meetings, but you can enjoy a code-free couple of meetings and holidays where you don't have to think about and dream about code circling over your head.
The t-shirt that says, enjoy a code-free.
Yes, that'd be great. So, yeah, so no code for you yet, that's it.
Item number,
Laugh track would come in.
Laugh track would have been great.
I don't even know what that is, but let's move on to item number 8. Everybody seen the minutes from November 10th? Any changes? I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept or approve the minutes of November the 10th, 2016.
Motion and a second. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Reports of action. Kimber. Commission comments.
I kind of do have one.
Okay.
I'll try to make it in less than 3 minutes. I'm concerned with our code enforcement. It just seems like, for instance, there's a big red or orange balloon that keeps popping up on the weekends in a subdivision down by the lake. And I have reported it. I know that Kimber has reported it. I've reported it. And on the weekends, I still see it. And I've reported snipe signs that have been there for months, and they don't get removed. Is there any way we can get our code enforcement to be more proactive rather than reactive?
Yes. I'm actually starting an email right now to Chief of Burton, and I'm going to encourage him to come back and watch this video at this point in the meeting. So I will have him do that, and then I will invite him to maybe work with Kimber on some potential future improvements, and we'll talk about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Steele. Any other comments?
Sorry, can I just respond to that really quick? Just
Oh,
as a heads
sure.
up, so the code enforcement officer informed me today that he got a hold of the balloon people and they won't be flying it. So let me know if it shows up, because that should be taken care of, hopefully.
Okay.
Director's report. Kimber.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Without objection, we adjourn. Too late, you didn't object. Turn off the video.
Steve, I want the record to reflect it's before 7:30.
I did not expect that tonight.
I want the record to say this before 7:30 times in a row.
Merry Christmas.
With things on the agenda that I thought were going to take a long time, so.
Right.
See, there are lots of advantages that come from not reading the packet. If we just pass it to find out what's in it.
We're still recording. Still recording.
Oh, crap.
I think that was loud.